It has been a while, and today I really want to catch you up on what I've been up to this last year. I want to focus on four main things. The first one, why I disappeared. The second one, update you on my immigration status. Then focus on my third and fourth move because, yes, I've moved again and then I moved yet again. And a little bit of the traveling I've been doing. Something that you need to know about me is that I am not one for the spotlight. Anyone that knows me in my regular day to day life knows that I am very much an introverted person, a shy person, a person who kind of hides in the back of the room in a social setting. Being on here and on TikTok requires me being on the spotlight, like my face right here. I'm talking to a camera. It makes me very uncomfortable to do this for a really long period. And one of the biggest reasons I left social media for almost the majority of last year is because I had this bit of a crisis moment where I kept asking myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, what authority or what value do I have as a person to be on here and telling people, like, hey, this is what happened with my immigration journey? Like, I self deported. I've been in Canada. This is my journey towards permanent residency. I'm a permanent resident. I just didn't feel like I had that credibility to be on here telling people. But I started to think about it more in a way that, well, I'm not telling you, you need to do this, you need to do that, nor am I posing as an expert, as an immigration authority. I'm not a lawyer, I don't have legal training, but I did come to the realization that my story is valuable. My insights of what I learned is also valuable. And if people want to use it, they can. And if they don't, well, they don't have to. So bringing all those things together is really what kind of jump started me coming back to social media. Another big reason I took a break was because I felt like I was losing my identity on social media. I feel like people know me as the girl who self-deported, the girl who self-deported to Canada. But that's it. But there's so much more to me than just the girl who self-deported to Canada. I have an identity beyond just my immigration status. But I was having a little bit of a conflict here because, as I just said, I don't like to be on the spotlight. So to talk about my personal life or what I do in Canada, what do I do outside of social media? Like I'm here now, but in my 9 to 5, what am I up to? In my evenings, what do I do? What type of person am I besides the person who just shows up on social media to talk about immigration? I feel like I was losing that and I was having a hard time bridging who I am as a whole versus just this little piece of me. So that led to another crisis, which compounded with the original crisis, which is another big reason I disappeared. On the immigration front, I do have very, 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 very exciting updates to share with all of you. As of last year, I am very gratefully and very happily a Canadian permanent resident. And it makes me feel like all the sacrifices and challenges and obstacles and loss that I've had over the years have culminated to finally having this status, this safety that I am okay. There is nothing that can happen to me here, that no matter what happens in politics, I will always have a home in Canada if I wish to stay here. And that's something that I've wanted and I've longed for my entire life. I want to share with all of you a little bit of my timeline because that's a question that I get asked quite often. So I made this little graphic. So I arrived in Canada in January of 2022. That's when I first set foot in Canada. But I think I've shared many times that I started school remotely online when I was still in the US. So my immigration journey started in reality in the fall of 2021. But I set foot in Canada in January 2022. I graduated and then submitted my post graduation work permit application in September of 2022. My post graduation work permit was approved in January of 2023. And in December of that year, 2023, I received my invitation to apply for permanent residency. I submitted that in January. And in May of 2024, I received my approval, making me an official permanent resident. And something that I still can't wrap my head around that seems like, whoa, is the fact that next summer 2026, I'll meet the eligibility criteria to apply for citizenship. The fact that I'm just a permanent resident right now already means the entire world to me. One of the downsides of being an immigrant is that I don't have a home base. I moved to Canada without having any friends or family here. So I picked the city that this university that I applied to was in and then just went from there. When I first arrived in Canada, I lived in Waterloo, Ontario, and then I moved to Windsor, Ontario. No particular reason, just the fact that, well, I don't have a home, might as well just bounce around and see what fits, and maybe we establish a home base there. Uh, if I'm being completely honest, it's been incredibly lonely, sad. I've had many times where I just cry because I just feel so alone. As part of my trying to find a place to call home in Canada, I ended up moving to Sudbury, Ontario. Sudbury, Ontario is the largest city in Northern Ontario. Toronto is the largest city in Ontario as the whole province, but specifically in Northern Ontario, it's Sudbury. Sudbury has a population of about 170,000 people and a very heavily francophone population, meaning French speaking folks. Sudbury became very popular in the 1880s thanks to the identification of the nickel copper ore found there. So since then, it's been widely known as a mining town. Sudbury's iconic attraction, the Big Nickel, is an exact replica of the 1951 Canadian nickel, and it was built in 1964 and symbolizes the wealth that Sudbury has contributed to the Canadian economy through nickel production. It is also the largest coin in the world. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't give much research or thought to my move before moving, so I did find some challenges right away that I should have probably anticipated. The first one being, it is a very spread out city. It's very large, but it's also very spread out. And without a car, it is quite difficult to get around. When I first moved to Sudbury, I had a car. I was a proud owner of a little Toyota Yaris, but it died. Unfortunately, the road conditions in Sudbury didn't help that. It just killed it a little bit quicker. But with that, I ended up having to do a lot of things by foot, which, you could say that it ended up being a great thing for my health, which I appreciated. But there was points where I was walking an hour to get to work and then an hour to get back. At that time, and honestly for the majority of my relationship, I've been in a long distance relationship. And my partner was in Montreal at the time. So getting to him was just another layer of complication. I had to take a 6 hour bus ride from Sudbury to Toronto, and then a 7 hour bus ride from Toronto to Montreal. Sudbury does have a small airport, but it's not in Sudbury. So the cab to get to the airport would cost me like $90 just for the cab, plus the flight, which usually is more than 350, and that's assuming you booked it way in advance. And when I first took my flight out of Sudbury, I was honestly a little bit scared. I had never seen such a small plane. One big assumption I made about moving to Sudbury was that because it was a northern community, that housing would be cheap and plentiful, which it was not. When I first moved there, I didn't have a place to live, so one of my coworkers very gracefully allowed me to live in their basement. And I thought, well, this is gonna save me a month of rent. While I look for a place in person, though, I thought I would be there for a month. I ended up being there for 3 months. I definitely overstayed my welcome, but I could not find a place to live. Another interesting thing about Sudbury is the presence of black bears. That was something I wasn't ready for. I didn't get to see a bear, which I am happy for because I think I would be the person who does everything wrong. To add to the list of drastic things I like to do with my life, I ended up moving to Montreal, Quebec at the end of last year. Now, going from a city of 170,000 people to a city of 1.8 million was big. I spent way too much time in Sudbury because I remember my first weeks in Montreal just being like, whoa. Montreal is one of Canada's five largest cities. From my time that I've been here, I was very honestly shocked to find out that there is a very big Spanish speaking population here. There isn't a day where I don't walk outside that I don't hear someone speaking Spanish, which up to this point, rarely, never. I could go months without meeting, hearing another Latino, but now that's not the case anymore. The biggest driver for me moving here was actually to end the long distance part of my relationship. For anyone that's been in a long distance relationship, you know how hard that can be. And I really just missed my boo, so I wanted to move here. Another very exciting thing I got to do last year was travel. I was very fortunate to visit three countries: Costa Rica, República Dominicana, and Mexico. Starting off with Costa Rica, when I went to Costa Rica, the very first thing we did was visit the Monteverde area, specifically the Monteverde Cloud Forest. But my very first sunrise in Costa Rica was just stunning. It is an image that will be forever engraved in my mind because I just cannot describe to you how beautiful and how peaceful that morning was. Something I will honestly never, never forget. The next thing we did was do a little bit of hiking. And this is honestly so in line with the person that I am, but within 10 minutes of starting a hike, I sprained my ankle. And that was the very first day we were there. We had 6 more days to go. We also had the fantastic idea to rent a car in order to get around the country. I am so grateful that we did not get in an accident, but there were so many close calls. We also went to La Fortuna specifically. We had a full day tour, which was honestly jam packed, where we started with the Mystical Park Hanging Bridges tour, which was another stunning afternoon. I saw so much wildlife that I would only hear about in textbooks or watch in videos. So to see them up front was honestly so beautiful. It's a memory that I'll never forget. Then we went to swim at La Fortuna waterfall, which was another stunning, breathtaking view. And finally, we went to do a little bit of swimming in the hot springs. And we are just funny people. We were prepared for the whole day. We had the swim tops to get into the hot springs and the waterfalls, but the hiking boots ready for that hike. We had versatile outfits. We're so silly. To end our trip, we went to Santa Teresa and Tamarindo, and we clearly did not do our research once again because it turns out that these beaches were not calm water, did not have calm water. It was very aggressive, wave filled water, so we got taken out by the waves. But it was so much fun. So much fun. I also had the opportunity to go to Punta Cana in República Dominicana. We stayed at the Rio República resort, and honestly, it did not disappoint. We also did some excursions, which were so much fun, and we even went to Cocobongo, which I had a blast at. I will definitely say that this resort was more for a younger crowd and definitely more party over relaxation, which I guess real hotels and real resorts are known for that. But yes, I can confirm that is indeed true based on all the shenanigans that I saw when I was there. My very last trip of the year was to Mexico. And when I went to Mexico, that was my first time traveling as a permanent resident. So, as you can imagine, it was a very emotional trip for me just to feel that I had the ability to go and then come back without any troubles. I won't get into all the details of Mexico because we could be here for a really long time. But if you're interested in knowing or seeing more about any of these trips, feel free to check out my Instagram highlights. I like to spam my stories when I'm on trips, so there is a really detailed recollection of everything that happened, specifically in Mexico too. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and please let me know in the comments what type of questions you have, what type of content you'd like me to see. I do read those, and I will be adjusting my content and my videos based off of your feedback. Until next time, bye.